A Russian strategic bomber was destroyed 800 kilometers inside Russia. It's a plane the Soviet Union stopped building decades ago. Once it's gone for good. And that wasn't even the biggest story of the week. Today's video covers a lot, so here's the overview first. We'll start with the strategic bomber Ukraine just destroyed deep inside Russia, and the record missile barrage Russia fired back at Kyiv days later. Then we'll move through the front line: Sumy, Kharkiv, Kupiansk, Lyman, Pokrovsk, where several small but telling shifts happened this week. After that, the naval and economic campaign against Russia's rear, including a warehouse fire that's rippling through Russian e-commerce. And we'll close with a quick note on the leadership dispute still simmering in Kyiv, which hasn't gone away, even if it's not today's main story. Welcome back. Let's start in Saratov Oblast, deep inside Russia. On the night of July 16th, Ukraine's security service flew long-range drones roughly 800 kilometers to hit the Engels air base, one of Russia's main strategic bomber bases, home to the Tu-95 and Tu-160, the aircraft that carry Kh-101 cruise missiles against Ukrainian cities. The strike tore off the tail section of a Tu-95, according to the SBU's own assessment, which called the damage critical. President Zelensky confirmed the operation personally. The significance here isn't really about one aircraft, it's about what that aircraft represents. The Tu-95 hasn't been manufactured since the Soviet Union collapsed. Russia's fleet is a fixed, shrinking inventory. Every one destroyed is one that will never be replaced, and every remaining one just learned that 800 kilometers of Russian territory is no longer a safe distance. That mattered directly a few nights later. Russia launched one of its largest missile barrages of the war against Kyiv. Roughly 40 missiles and cruise missiles combined, including 10 Zircons, 25 Iskanders, 3 Onyx missiles, and 3 air-launched Kh-69s, plus 125 one-way attack drones. Ukraine says it intercepted 108 drones and 17 of the ballistic and cruise missiles. That still means roughly 18 missiles got through, along with the drones that weren't stopped. Notably absent from that barrage, the Kh-101, the cruise missile normally launched from aircraft like the one just destroyed at Engels. Whether that absence traces directly back to disrupted bomber operations isn't confirmed, but the timing lines up in a way that's hard to ignore. Now, to the ground war, where several smaller movements this week add up to a familiar pattern: probing, contesting, occasionally reversing. In Sumy Oblast, geolocated footage shows Russian soldiers west of Komanivka, inside territory already considered contested, meaning continued activity rather than a new breakthrough. Further along, Russian soldiers were spotted in Korchakivka, roughly 5 kilometers south of the line Ukraine's own mapping had marked as Russian-controlled, before being engaged by Ukrainian forces there. That's a temporary infiltration with real, if brief, success. Near Kupiansk, a Russian military blogger himself confirmed that Ukrainian forces cleared Kupiansk-Vozlovyi, restoring full Ukrainian control. That detail matters more than it sounds like it should. Had Russia held that town, it would have split Ukraine's bridgehead across the Oskol River into 2 smaller, more easily pressured footholds. Instead, that bridgehead stays intact. It's a useful reminder that not every week on this front is purely bad news for Ukraine. Some ground lost to infiltration in prior weeks is actively being taken back, even as Russia probes elsewhere along the same stretch of line. Further south in Lyman, Russian sources have claimed for a while now that the town had already fallen. New visual confirmation shows Ukrainian troops still fighting inside central Lyman, under attack but still present, meaning parts of the town are contested, not lost. Near Kostiantynivka, there was a strange propaganda episode worth a brief mention. Footage showed soldiers from a unit closely associated with Commander-in-Chief Syrsky posing with his portrait inside the town, seemingly signaling loyalty to him during his current political pressure. A day later, different footage surfaced showing the same 2 soldiers, confirmed by matching details mirrored left to right, lowering the Ukrainian flag and raising a Russian one instead. The unit later confirmed those soldiers had been captured. Whatever the original intent, it's a reminder that footage from contested towns should be read carefully before being taken as proof of anything. Near Pokrovsk in Iskra, Ukrainian forces engaged Russian soldiers yet again, following earlier reports of Russian infiltration, and even earlier reports of Ukrainian forces capturing Russian soldiers there. That back and forth suggests continued unresolved Russian presence in the southern part of the settlement, rather than a stable Russian foothold. Further south near Zaporizhzhia, Russia's regional governor claimed the situation was fully under control and that Ukrainian drone effectiveness had dropped sharply. Russian military bloggers mocked that claim directly, daring the governor to film himself personally driving a fuel convoy if he genuinely believed the road was safe. Their own explanation for reduced drone activity was blunter: fewer vehicles on the road because civilians and fuel trucks alike are now too afraid to drive it, which naturally means fewer targets for drones to hit. Not that the drones themselves have gotten less effective. Away from the ground war, Ukraine's deeper campaign against Russia's rear kept expanding. 8 more Russian air defense systems were targeted overnight, adding to a running tally Ukraine says has now destroyed roughly 3/4 of a specific air defense network's capacity. In the naval campaign, Ukraine says it has now struck 183 vessels total, 118 in the Sea of Azov and 64 in the Black Sea, plus dozens of Crimean substations. Russia has responded by pulling roughly 200 elite drone operators from Rubicon, one of its most effective frontline electronic warfare and strike units, and redeploying them to guard ships at sea instead. A real cost, since that unit can no longer contribute to frontline operations, while its people are stationed on increasingly vulnerable vessels far from where their expertise used to matter most. And the war has reached one of Russia's most ordinary daily habits: online shopping. Continued strikes on Wildberries warehouses, Russia's largest e-commerce logistics operator, roughly equivalent to Amazon, have reportedly destroyed 10 to 15% of its storage capacity, with damage estimated above $1 billion. Weeks earlier, Wildberries and its main competitor had quietly changed their seller contracts to stop covering losses from attacks, meaning small Russian business owners whose entire inventory burned in these warehouses are simply out that money, with no insurance and no replacement. Some of that same logistics network also handled dual-use goods bound for soldiers, drone parts, equipment bought informally by families rather than issued through official channels. Which means these strikes double as pressure on an improvised military supply chain, not just consumer retail. There's one more thread worth a brief mention before we close, since it hasn't gone away just because it isn't the headline this week. Zelensky has continued meeting separately with both dismissed Defense Minister Fedorov and Commander-in-Chief Syrsky, alongside a running series of meetings with senior generals. A pattern widely read as auditioning Syrsky's eventual replacement, even if no final decision has been announced. The bomber that flew missiles into Ukrainian cities for years just learned that 800 kilometers isn't far enough anymore. The town that Russia already claimed to have taken is still being defended, block by block. And somewhere between a burned airframe in Saratov and a burned warehouse outside Moscow, the same message keeps repeating, whether it's aimed at a bomber crew, a warehouse owner, or a general fighting for his job. There is no longer a safe distance, and there is no longer a quiet corner of the war.